Hi, everyone. When I think about resistance to coaching, I don't immediately think about pushback or conflict. I think about absence. For most of my career, other than in year one, I wasn't really coached. That year, I was assigned a mentor who candidly shared that mentoring was not his strength and that I seemed to be doing just fine. At my next school, I was told I was performing well and instructional coaches needed to focus on larger problems elsewhere. None of this felt affirming to me. It felt as though something about me or my role supporting English learners was less urgent or less compelling than other instructional positions and problems. Development work appeared to be reserved for teachers in a visible crisis or for those formally chosen for a coaching cycle. And over time, I simply stopped asking for support. That experience shaped how I think about resistance in coaching. Um, when coaching is closely associated with remediation, hesitation can become a form of self protection. That perspective shapes how I anticipate resistance in my current context. In my recent coursework conversations, I've intentionally chosen colleagues with whom I share a mutual respect for skill, dedication, and professional growth. In those interactions, there hasn't been much resistance because these are people enthusiastic about participating in a reflective process that is never offered to them. That enthusiasm, however, highlights a much larger issue. Coaching still isn't embedded as a universal professional practice. When coaching isn't routine, people have to interpret why the conversation is happening at all. So, to address interpretation based resistance, I want to rely less on formal framing and more on consistency of practice. So, because I'm not operating in an official coaching role, most of my conversations begin organically with colleagues approaching me with questions or ideas. In these moments, a simple entry point like, "What's on your mind?" allows the conversation to unfold without triggering any evaluative associations. Beyond interpretation, I also have to consider how existing professional dynamics influence resistance. A second form of resistance has definitely arose through role perception. Because of my prior practice of providing professional development, many colleagues see me as an expert, especially in areas related to English learners and literacy. And they often ask directly what I would do in their situation. Redirecting those questions back to them through structured inquiry requires discipline on my part and may initially feel unfamiliar to them. Shifting from advice giving to a thinking partnership subtly alters our professional dynamic, meaning my behavior becomes the primary change needed to regulate role perception resistance. When colleagues ask what I would do, the urge to provide clear, efficient, practice based advice is strong. Resisting that impulse is currently my central area for growth as a coach and mentor. And it takes work. Instead of offering immediate solutions, I have begun to pause, redirect, and ask questions in the same way I already do with students who want me to just give them an answer. This deliberate restraint repositions the whole interaction. By consistently returning ownership of ideas and decision making to the colleague, I am gradually redefining my role as a coach and not an expert. Over time, I hope that consistency can relax the expectation that I'm a provider of solutions and maybe establish me as a partner in reflection. A third and more relational form of resistance may emerge in situations where identity and belonging are involved. I anticipate this kind of defensiveness in at least one of my peer conversations this week. My suspicion is that this defensiveness is connected to self-protection. When someone works within a department culture that treats them as peripheral rather than central, feedback can feel like confirmation of marginality instead of an invitation to reflect. Under those circumstances, we're really definitely talking about resistance becoming protective. Since psychological safety is needed to overcome defensiveness, I begin by slowing the pace of inquiry, monitoring my tone, and demonstrating my genuine curiosity. Depending on the individual and the history of the relationship, deeper questioning may need to follow intentional trust building. Um, That could include listening longer than usual, acknowledging existing competence, or focusing first on shared goals before exploring any specific challenges. Affirming professional capability while inviting reflection positions coaching as a collaborative support structure. And when resistance is protective, steadiness and consistency might create the conditions for better reflection. So, when I step back from these specific dynamics, I've come to see resistance more broadly than before. In my view, resistance is really part of the learning process. The adage, once bitten, twice shy, reflects how experience reshapes a person's willingness to take risks. If coaching is intended to support sustained professional growth, moments of hesitation are natural. Barriers may emerge unexpectedly, even among colleagues who are deeply committed to improving their practice. As a coach, my responsibility is to recognize resistance, interpret its source, and respond with steadiness and intention. And that requires flexibility, patience, and a willingness to adjust my own approach in service of another person's development. Um, when resistance is approached with consistency and care, the hope is coaching remains aligned with its purpose, supporting growth over time. Thanks for listening.